Thank you for joining us tonight. This is what I call a good faith space, where every Wednesday we talk about different topics with different people on a panel. Um, and so I wanted to talk about sexuality and media. Before we get into it, I would like the people on the panel to introduce themselves. So we'll start with Gigi. You want to introduce yourself? And we lost Gigi. All right, Jackie, you want to introduce yourself? Jackie, can you hear me?
Ah, there we go. I think my mic was
Oh,
off.
okay.
I am Jacky St. James. I am a writer, producer, and director in the adult entertainment industry. And I also work exclusively with a company called Balesa, which is a adult company run by women and from the female gaze.
Okay, great. Um, Tickle, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you. I go by the pseudonym of Tickle Tex because hopefully I'm tickling people's minds and emotions with things I say. I do a lot of political memes and heavily engaged in politics, originally from South Africa, now living in Houston, Texas. I host usually of my own spaces where it's mostly politics but some humor, and I'm definitely opinionated.
Okay, great. And I appreciate you coming on the last minute. I'm trying to get Gigi. She had dropped out, and I think she's coming back in a moment. And I apologize if I mute myself. I'm trying not to cough anybody's ear. I just got off of the over the coof. I feel fine. It's just this lingering cough that's a pain in the ass. I'll give Gigi one more moment to try and jump on here. One thing about getting sick, and make sure your voice nice and deep. What were you gonna say, Jackie?
Oh, I was just going to say, I think she is in here, but she's a listener.
Yeah,
I
I'm sending
see.
her.
Oh, okay,
I'm
got it.
sending her an invite, and
Got it.
she's working her way through, I guess. While she's going through that, I'll introduce myself for people who aren't familiar with me. Um, my name is Adam Coleman. I'm the author of a book called Black Victim to Black Victor, which gives social commentary about race, family, and a bunch of other things, as well as talking about my personal story mixed in with it. I'm also the founder of Wrong Speak Publishing, which is a platform for free speech and intellectual thought, is kind of how I put it. Um, so, if you guys get a chance, check out wrongspeak.net and just check out the different articles and different topics. And if anybody wants to contribute, feel free to contact me. Um, that's myself. I'm going to try one more time with Gigi. Shout out to Heidi, who's in the chat here. I appreciate it. I guess Gigi's having some sort of issue.
She might need to update Twitter.
Oh, man. All right. Well, while she's going through that, and if she needs any help, she can send me a message. Um, I'll get started. So I came up with this title for this particular topic a while ago. I didn't really have anything in mind per se at the time. I knew something possibly relevant will come up as we got closer. And I guess like the first thing that pops in my head when I think of sexuality media that I kind of want to talk about, um, I guess like the most blunt way of putting it is, do we care too much about other people's sexuality? Um, I feel like we talk far too much about what people do in their bedrooms, or where they like to stick their thing in. Most people really don't care. But I think sexuality has been talked about to such an extent that it's part of someone's existence. Like they are their sexuality, um, rather it being your personal kind of existence, and not everybody else's existence that you have to constantly acknowledge. And I think there's a line between the two. Um, I may not be of the same sexuality as you. You may be into something that I'm not into, and that's fine. That's your private business. But I think we've kind of blended the lines between what's private and public as well, that we have to make everything public and very little private. Um, oh, I think Gigi is here. Gigi, can you hear me?
Yes. Is this working? Is this thing on?
Yes.
Oh my God! Don't ever,
It's been a
don't
roller
ever
coaster.
do this to an almost senior citizen.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Sorry,
So,
Adam.
that's okay. Did you catch what I was just talking about?
No, and I want you to go over every single syllable and really slowly. No, I'm kidding. Just go.
No, but long and
Yes.
short, what I was saying is that, are we putting too much importance in people's sexuality, and making it too public about what we like to do in a private setting? You can go first.
Moi? Are we putting too, well, I think to me, I grew up in the 70s in Hollywood, and I've seen, we had kids all kinds of sexualities at our high school, Hollywood.
I'm not sure if it's just me or not, but I can't hear a thing, and I only see 3 speakers.
You can't.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? That's more important. I'm kidding.
I can hear you all.
I can hear everyone as well.
Yay, Jackie.
I can't hear Gigi at all. I don't even see her with a mic.
Oh, that's weird. I see you tickle.
I'm gonna leave and come back. I'll be right back.
Okay, don't.
Yeah, you can leave and come back. That's fine.
So, it's interesting to me because I grew up in Hollywood, the streets of Hollywood, the Gold Cup, everyone's sexuality being out there and people being very comfortable being out. And I graduated in 79, so, so I think this is sort of, it's like life repeating itself, but I do think I'm fatigued by it. I don't really care about what somebody does in their own bedrooms or, so I get, I guess I'm a little over it. But like, what else is interesting about you, besides what you do with your genitals? I don't know.
Just to ask you a little follow-up, in your life, where did you start to see the shift where it seemed to be happening all over the place? Because I know you said you were in Hollywood.
Yeah.
But where did you start to see where it became almost like mainstream, like in your opinion?
It's funny because I loved Prince so much, and I used to go to his concerts a lot, and his sexuality, whatever it was always on display. And then there was David Bowie before him, and so by the time Madonna came out and was like humping the stage, I'd already seen it. It's just now it's gone off into 100 different directions and different identities, and yet people aren't having as much sex. And that's what I think is really interesting, is that the more we talk about it and more we see it and more people are very proud of whatever they are, well, is anyone actually, excuse me, fucking? I don't know.
That's actually a good point.
Yeah. That's why I made
and
it.
And before we move on to the next person, you didn't get a chance to introduce yourself. So
Oh my God.
You want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yes. Hi, I'm Gigi Levangie, and I'm a novelist. I've written 7 published novels. I wrote a movie called Stepmom with Julia Roberts and Susan Sarandon. I'm inundated right now with scripts and books and stuff, and I talk shit on Twitter. That's what I'm really known for. So
That's a great introduction.
thank you.
No problem.
That's my kind of gal. I
Yes,
like you already.
All right, Jacky, what do you think as far as what I was saying before? Is it
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I grew up, I was a teenager in the 90s, and I remember that my sexuality and how I learned about sex, because I'm, former Catholic recovering, is that I learned about sex and how sex should happen on, I'm sorry, embarrassed to say this, but on soap operas, which back in the 90s was very different than what you see on television today. In the 90s, you would wait 2 years before people would have sex because it was this long drawn out thing. And it was this very meaningful um, moment that was captured between at least the main stars of the show. But then I noticed there was a shift in sex just becoming predominant in television and everywhere when I got to college, which was 94 to 98, where Melrose Place and like a lot of those shows like that were glorifying casual sex became the norm. And now as it has progressed with the advent of tube sites and porn and everybody being able to access it, it seems like, I mean, you can't watch a television show now where anyone would wait 2 years to have sex. I mean, I guess Law and Order might be an example, but that's such an old show. But like, most shows it's rushing to get into bed and they're driven by sex. Um, and I think what Gigi said is interesting is that less people are having sex. I don't know statistically what that number is, but it isn't any surprise to me given that porn is so accessible now and people are behind their phones so much and they're so detached that why bother when you could just watch it on your phone or your computer? Why really connect? And few people really understand what connection is, at least in younger generations, I have found.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's like the instant gratification. And if you can do that, then you can avoid relationships. It's, I guess different people have different perspectives as far as how difficult it is to actually get sex. From a male's perspective, it's different from a female perspective. Um, so yeah, but that's interesting. The shift that you saw. Um, Miss Tickle, what do you think?
As you know, I do a lot of political memes on behalf of the Conservatives. And I'm thrilled. Yes, this is a brag, forgive me. I'm thrilled that frequently Don Jr. puts me on his Instagram. But I have something that I want you to think about when we talk about sexuality in media. Does anyone know the first television couple to be in the same bed? Not
No
many.
idea.
No one.
Wasn't it?
Lucy and
Was it
Ricky?
Lucy and
Nope.
Ricky?
No, it
I
was
thought
not.
that they
No,
pushed their
no.
beds together eventually. No? Okay.
Eventually they did, and even though she was heavily pregnant, they still had them in twin beds. The first television couple to actually sleep and be seen on television in the same bed, and this is how they got away with it because it was a cartoon, and it was Fred and Wilma, the Flintstones. And ever since then, it's gone all over the place. But that is sexuality in television history right there. And Fred and Wilma of the Flintstones were the first ones to be actually seen in the same bed. And shortly thereafter, Lucy and Ricky, of course, she was pregnant, trying to hide it from the TV audience. She was mostly seen from the shoulders up at that point. And then they allowed them to push their beds together after Fred and Wilma. My overall opinion on sexuality in television, media, movies, whatever it happens to be, it is a personal choice. There's always that on-off button. You can flip it over, don't watch it, your choice. And I fully stand behind that. However, sexuality now has been politicized on all corners, on every aspect, every letter of the alphabet, however you wish to put it together. It's all been politicized for monetary gains, for political gains. And, we've always had the quote unquote porn industry. We've always had uh, uh, people with same sex relationships, but never before has it ever been so politicized for its overall content as a winning game for those that are politicizing it. And ultimately, it's still a choice of what you do behind your own bedroom door. And I fully support that too, which not many of us conservatives actually get a pat on the back for that. But that's exactly how the majority of us feel. If it's a friend of mine, if you're happy, I'm happy for you. And that essentially is where it should be and where it should stay. Um, if you enjoy watching other people on your televisions, go for it. If you don't, turn it over. Simple as that. We have choices, and we still have the ability to make those decisions for ourselves. If it's not what you like, don't look at it. And I can't be any more bare bones on this topic than that. It's just the interference now, again, is, it's a monetary gain. The interference is a monetary gain for so many quote unquote teams to try and push. It's not an agenda because we've accepted these things already. So there is no agenda. It's a false agenda. It's an anomaly that's being brought to us on a regular basis. And I still can't figure out why, besides profit. Profit from clout, profit from financial gains, profit for politicized politics, in politicians that want to be heard and make a loud noise. I think the majority of us have accepted these things that are placed in front of us, or ideas that are put inside our head. Again, we have that choice. And I think the majority of people have forgotten that. Instead of screaming at the television, the movie, the book, and let's not forget books, all those romance novels. Wow, those are highly sexualized. Highly sexualized. But they're read in dark corners, majoritively by older women. But they're still very sexualized aspects of life to now put in book form. Some are made into movies. By the way, I love Stepmom, great movie. And we forgetting that this has been around us for a long, long time. But we always used to know we had decisions and choices.
I guess I hear what you're saying as far as turn it off. If you don't want to watch it, turn it off. And generally, I agree with you. I guess my concern, uh, and this sounds cliche, but what about the kids? You know, because I think the sexuality part is kind of blending into the minor part. For people who aren't necessarily familiar, the other day, USA Today published an article in many ways trying to put context behind pedophilia. Um, Also, the same day, I believe, there was an article that came out about Ted Cruz's daughter and her sexuality at the age of 13. And I think there's a weird comfort when it comes to talking about sexuality for minors. I know the term minor is used for anyone who's 18 and under, and I think most people understand that when you're 16, you're probably being somewhat sexual. That's not abnormal, right? Whether it be kissing, touching, and stuff like that. People, kids have lost their virginity. So, but I think there's a certain threshold where 13 is pretty young to be determining what your sexual preference is, as if that's okay that they're examining sexuality in such a way. Like, I don't know. I don't want to come off as being naive about teenagers or anything like that, but there's something weird when the media props up minors when they're talking about their sexuality. And it's something very uncomfortable as a father of a teenager. My son is 16. And, that this is something that feels very strange to me. And all these different things. Granted, two different scenarios as far as, the two different articles, but there are more and more instances of this popping up, of children, let's just call them what they are, children talking about their sexual preferences. And I find that slightly disturbing. And I wonder how much the media kind of plays into it, or at least props them up. And I just gave the example of Ted Cruz's daughter being propped up by a media outlet to talk about her sexuality at the age of 13. There's something strange about that. And this is outside of politics. He happens to be a famous politician, but if it was anybody else's 13-year-old daughter, I would feel weird about a news outlet wanting to prop them up to talk about their sexual preferences. Gigi, what do you think?
Well, I find it invasive and creepy on either side, to go after someone's child, especially in that manner. And I think that, what they did, I mean, talk about a poor choice. I find the whole thing about wanting to know, like the teachers, I think in San Diego, who were trying to figure out who in the classroom or in the school was, borderline, gay or possibly trans in an elementary school. They're going after younger, and by they, I don't even know what I mean by they, because it seems to be teachers, professors, adults twerking in libraries. And yes, I sound like an old man yelling at clouds, but I think that we do have to, as a society, we have an obligation to protect our kids from adult influences of any kind that kind of invades their childhood, and what should be a protected, at least until 14, 15, 16, the protected years. The problem is our iPhones. Every 11-year-old has an iPhone, so 10, 11, they can see anything on their phones, and it's kind of softened us all up to make it like, okay, now we're talking about MAP with minor attracted, is it minor attracted pedophiles or minor attracted something?
No, the first one sounds good.
Yeah, whatever it is. Like the USA Today article was written by a woman. I thought that was interesting. I was wondering if she had kids. That stuff will never be. It won't fly with me. I'm not. I have a low tolerance for bullshit, and whether it's coming from a Catholic priest taking advantage of children, or from from anyone from the right, anyone from the left, I think we should all be calling it out. I also think there's something very deeply wrong with trying to recruit children at such a young age for political gain. And I think there will be a backlash. I mean, people are looking to live off the grid. They're looking to live like the Amish, going back to the basics. And I think this has something to do with it. This whole push to determine our children's sexuality, when they're in elementary school, even though a lot of kids already know by 6 or 7, but to make it so important rather than what they're learning, that's a very odd choice for society, I think.
I agree with you. Jacky, what do you think?
I want to mention a point that my friend Lotus, who's on this speakeasy or whatever this is called right now, she had mentioned too. The other thing was the propping up of Britney Spears as a virgin icon back in the day, and this has been something that we've constantly done as a society to sexualize children. I mean, Britney Spears, I think when she was first came to popularity after the Mickey Mouse Club, she was 13 or 14 or 15. and there was a lot of focus on her sexuality then. I think that I agree. I don't believe that somebody's sexual preference should be something it's a main focus. I mean, your teenage years are exploratory, but I don't believe society should be pressuring people uh, to identify themselves as any way. I mean, and as you said, Adam, I mean, when you're in those teen years, by 16, you know, most people, or a good percentage, have had sex. I don't know if that percentage has changed now with the advent of tube sites, but people are certainly having sex. So I don't think if somebody's preference is, you know, I'm bi or whatever. I think Ted Cruz's daughter had said whatever she was, that, you know, it's necessarily uh, wrong for her to be contemplating those things, because I think everyone at those hormonal years are contemplating, you know, what their interests are. But I don't think that the media should be publicizing or glorifying anyone's choices, whether it be you're a virgin or you're heterosexual or bi or whatever your choice is. With regards to the pedophilia, I actually have strong opinions about this. So I am currently in graduate school right now to be a licensed marriage and family therapist, and pedophilia is actually something that I do want to look into, because I've read these articles and I also feel that we're in a weird situation where, you know, we're obviously and rightfully vilifying people who have harmed children, the media being no exception to that. But we also have to address, and I think, Adam, you might have posted something about this on your Twitter recently, but we have to figure out, if these people are members of society, okay, and they're living among us, what we do with them if they haven't actually acted on it. That doesn't mean that they're good people, or that they couldn't potentially do something, but if they haven't yet committed a crime, how do we handle that? I think you posted something about whether it was whether they were biologically born that way. And I didn't read the article, so I can't really speak to that. But I do think that we need to get people help that have these predilections for very dangerous, uh, I don't even want to say sexual interest, because it's not, I mean, it's rape. And so I think that we need to offer some sort of support and guidance. I mean, I think some people have just said to me, well, let's simply just eliminate all pedophiles. Well, that's not an option. So how do we deal with those people? And is the media exacerbating that problem by glorifying underage girls in a sexual way, or children, any children, boys as well? Those are my thoughts. I'm sorry, I was kind of rambling there.
No, it's okay. So I think I know what you're talking about, the tweet that you're referring to. So what I was basically was talking about how um, they're using a very similar playbook as far as saying, well, they were born this way, so they can't help it, to lend an extra layer of sympathy towards them, um, where we start to destigmatize pedophilia just in general. You know, where we say, like, for example, and I credit mostly from Douglas Murray's book, because he makes a from Douglas Murray's book, because he makes a pretty good point. You know, how we viewed homosexuality back in the 1980s. It was a lifestyle. This is a lifestyle. So if it's a lifestyle, it's a choice, right? That was how a lot of people viewed it. But that viewpoint shifted to, I was born this way. I was born gay. And we had more exposure to gay people within media, and just have more conversations about homosexuality. And we accepted that if you're gay, you were born this way. And so if you're born this way, you can't help it. And so what I am concerned with is that people who are pedophiles are utilizing the same playbook to lend sympathy, and we can change our viewpoint on pedophilia. And so, like, the first step is, well, I'm non-offending. And so I guess my issue with the whole non-offending portion is, like, remove pedophilia from it. If I told you that I'm a I'm an adult male let's say I'm age 25, I have hormones running through me, and I will never act out my sexual urges to have sex with a woman, right? You would say that seems kind of weird. Like, all right, let's say you're 25 and you're a virgin. All right, well, you're getting some sort of release. You probably masturbate. What are you masturbating to? Well, I watch porn online of a man and a woman, and that's what I masturbate towards. That's my release, right? So now let's add what I get off to is children. I'm a non-offending person, right? So one, is it realistic that let's say 25-year-old pedophile will never act out his urges, his sexual urges? He's got testosterone running through him. He's a 25 healthy-year-old man. Why would he not act out his sexual urges, right? All right, let's say he doesn't actually do that. Well, what's his sexual release? Online pornography, right? And we know this exists. There are people who get caught with online pornography all the time of children. So even if they're non-offending, they're getting some sort of release from somewhere, right? And that fuels a particular industry of children being raped. So if they're not the ones who are raping, someone is, and they're filming it and they're selling it and they're contributing to this whole industry. So that's my general viewpoint when it comes to the whole pedophilia aspect. Jacky, I don't know. I was more so talking to Jacky, but if you want to respond, Jacky.
Yeah, I mean, so I totally get your point. I mean, although I think, and this is a true story, I received a letter from a pedophile 10 years ago, who I worked for a studio that did a lot of the young girl porn. Obviously, the young girls in porn are of legal age. And he said it helped him from acting out or seeking out actual child pornography. So there's sort of that bizarre double-edged sword there, where the porn that's being consumed, that's sort of focusing on younger girls, is maybe benefiting a pedophile, although luckily those girls are of legal age. But the question becomes, then what do we do with the pedophile? I mean, so at the end of the day, how do we handle people who have this desire? And if they were born with it, I mean, I think the difference is that if a pedophile is actually born a pedophile, if this is some, defect in their brain, the difference is that a pedophile is committing a horrific crime if he acts on it, whereas a gay person is not. If they're sleeping with, obviously, with somebody of legal age. But the pedophile is different. And how do we, as a society, deal with those people? Because we have to do something other than just shove them aside and then, treat them like they're beyond help. And then we can't give them help to do better. I mean, I understand what you're saying. Like, we obviously can't, child pornography is not an option. We don't want to create more issues of putting children in danger by them being able to seek out something, although there's crazy people all over the world filming that and committing horrific crimes. But I don't believe that every pedophile is watching child porn. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know statistically, but what would you do with these people then? I mean, how do we help these people? And I'm not putting them on a pedestal. I'm just saying they have to be dealt with so that more children aren't harmed. But what do we do? Is there an answer? Does anybody have an idea?
I personally don't know what that answer is, but what I do know, the answer is not trying to legitimize it, or not legitimize, trying to excuse make. And I don't like the angle that they're trying to go towards. Let's say, even if it's true, I don't think that's the angle that we should be going towards, as far as they were born this way, which we know of situations where, and I don't want to be too graphic, stuff happens to children, and then they end up growing up and repeating the same stuff that happened to them as a child, right? So that is something that was created from when they were a child, not something that they were born with. So we know those situations exist. And I think we should put a lot of emphasis on protecting children, and making them aware that this exists. But there's no simple answer. Like, I hear exactly what you're saying. There's no simple answer to it. Tickle, let's go to you. What do you think about all this?
You just kind of stole my words for a few seconds there, because I was about to say that molested children become child molesters themselves. So to try and normalize the behavior by saying it's the way that they were born doesn't add up to that exact math, does it? Because we know from evidence over decades now that molested children become child molesters. So that completely negates the whole idea that there is something wrong with a person's brain that does this. We live in a society, and for many years now, and the whole Britney Spears thing, absolutely correct, and that brings me to the point of where, an adult woman wearing a school uniform or a maid's outfit or a nurse's outfit have all been over sexualized, way over sexualized, and we've always had hints of this all throughout the recent history that I've been around, and I just turned 40 yesterday. So in the years that I've been around, I've noticed the increase of this. And, you know, prior to the boom in social media, our children were not aware of the phrase, none of us were aware of the phrase trending. And so, once upon a time, I went to an all girls high school. Yes, we had to wear those uniforms that everybody thinks are cute and sexy, including knee socks at the age of 16 and all of that good stuff. But we've overemphasized that now. We didn't have anything like the word trending. But when I was in high school, it was trendy to have a certain pair of shoes or a certain color backpack, or to fall in love with a certain pop group, music group, boy group, whatever. And now that purpose of trending has been abused into our children thinking it is a something that they should conform to by saying, well, these are my pronouns, and this, them, is, the, whatever the heck it all is. And I don't speak from ignorance. I'm just not going to get into all of the millions of pronouns we now see. And our children are being influenced into this truly by influencers. And the media has become an influencer, and television has become an influencer, and certainly our movies have become all highly influential to expose and promote these behaviors within our children. There's absolutely nothing on this planet that explains to me, and I have reached out to the universe, how a 5-year-old child can suddenly decide for themselves that they were born into the wrong body without outside influence. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Um, and yes, of course, we can always say, turn the TV off. I get that too. But it's not always that easy when it's happening within our schools. And we have teenagers that are suddenly announcing at 13 and 14 that they want to have sex change operations, or they're going to be taking hormone blockers and all of this. And we have these children are born to the quote unquote Xbox generation, and they have little to no involvement in their children's active lives. We're outside of feeding and clothing and generally caring for them. They do not involve themselves into their kids' lives. So we've got miniature adults now. We don't really have a lot of children anymore. We have miniature adults, and that's extremely scary, that we're burdening them with these quote unquote influences. And I find that more concerning than anything else. That I'm not blaming parents, I'm not putting the blame on them, but they're allowing their children to be in environments of influence, in not taking charge of the situation, having discussions with their children. Yes, including the sex talk that we all cringed about when we were kids. I got it. I got it in school too. I wasn't educated in the States. So, we got the sex talk from our biology teachers, and then backed up with parents, reinforcing all of that stuff. And, sitting there and cringing like a crazy kid with red hair and red face. Been there, done that. But we've lost a deep connection now, and more so than ever, of now that we're in year 3 of our kids at home, and they're on the internet more and more. The internet has become their essential babysitter. Schools have encouraged more internet usage through education and their programs. And so, it's kind of like, well, while you're here, look at this. TikTok, for example, they just recently got busted in a big article that when kids sign up over the age of 13, especially girls, the first thing that comes their way is about losing weight and about makeup and hair and all of these things that would sexualize them. And so TikTok has now rescinded and said that they'll take better control over the first impressions that a new sign up at the age of 13 would see. And it's kind of a little bit late. The horse is out of the barn on that one. But my bigger, true big concern is what our children are seeing around them in influences that we claim we have no control over. I don't have any children at this point. I hope to do one day. But I would be one of those parents that would be, a helicopter parent, I guess they're called now, which is quite a sin to do that for a parent that cares about what their kids are watching, seeing, hearing, listening, talking, just to make sure that we can't put them in bubble wrap, but we can select what they see, we can select what they hear, and we can select what is around them for negative influences. And it's because all of this is now trending, so we have millions of preteens and teens that are claiming all sorts of wild and wonderful things just because they want to be popular. And that's the influence of social media, unfortunately.
And it makes me think of my son, and like I said, he's 16 now, and you were mentioning all these different influences, whether it be social media, or whether it be television, or friends, or school. But this is why you guys see me all the time talk about family and how important family is. I look at how, lack of a better term, dysfunctional my family was by, moving around a lot, not having my father in my life, all these different things. And so for my son, I wanted to make sure that I was able to insulate him from, or I don't want to say insulate from, or I don't want to say insulate, shield him from certain things at certain times in his life. And just like quick funny story, I listen to hip hop every so often, but from when my son was a baby, I could be blasting music down the street. As soon as I was going to pick him up, I would change the music to electronic music, no words. This kid never heard lyrics in my car, but I did that purposefully because I wanted to kind of shield him from that. It doesn't mean that I expected that he would never hear a bad word ever spoken by someone, or on an album or anything like that. But I wanted him to see that I am not promoting this way. I'm not promoting this for you, right? If you want to listen to it when you get older, that's your choice. But I kind of I want my child to have some sort of innocence. And I remember I was talking to my son about something, and I accidentally cursed. That was another thing. I didn't curse in front of my son whatsoever, and I still kind of don't now. And I'm like, sorry. And he told me, he's like, Dad, I hear it all the time. It's okay. Right. And by him telling me that, kind of like, he's all right. Like, he's prepared to hear this. And it's that kind of thing when you have a relationship with your child, you kind of know when they're ready, or they let you know when they're ready for certain things. So you can only do so much to try and protect them from sexuality, protect them from social media. My son has slowly gotten onto social media. He has an Instagram account, but we've talked about what social media is, what it's about, the craziness of it, and he's keenly aware of it. And he can look at things, and we talk about it. He brings stuff up to me. So I think I think it's really important that parents have a good relationship with their child, because if things get crazy in the world, your child should be able to come to their parent and actually express to them their anxiety, confusion, questions, right, without judgment, and be able to figure things out with your kid. What I hate, and I truly hate, are all these social media posts where these parents use their children as fucking props, and so they can look good as parents, right? But that is not a parental thing to do, right? Whether you're for or against the vaccine, I don't really care. But when you put your quotes of what your child said, I'm protecting my grandma. Our child's not supposed to protect our fucking grandparents, right? It's supposed to be the other way around, right? But this is the kind of mind virus that we put into our kids these days, or at least some of these parents out here who call themselves parents. They're out to use their children to make themselves look good, right? They're out here confusing their children, feeding into their children's anxiety, feeding into their children's angst about the world. And this is where sexuality, it's confusing. Like when I hear a teenager saying, "Oh, I wasn't sure at the age of 12 and 13," I'm like, none of us are. Like, this is nothing new or special. But now we have to put some sort of classification on it. Like, this is something new. We have to, go to the DSM. What is this to explain this confusion? I don't know, it's called hormones. Like, we all go through it. And so for children to be forced to think like adults as their brains are still developing, all of these things just shows a lack of protection for children. Um, that's a little bit of my rant. Anybody can join in.
Let me just say, Adam, a couple things. I wanted to comment on Jacky's comment. I thought I found a correlation between abortion and pedophilia. At what point is a pedophile viable? You know, that's my sick mind. But anyway, thing I wanna say with Tickle, you're so right on parents. Parents view their children, and I've raised 3 sets of kids. I've raised or helped raise my sister's kids. She went to prison. I raised stepkids, and I remembered to have my own kids finally. Um, a lot of parents, many parents, mostly on the wealthier end of things, view their children as accessories. They're not kids, they're accessories. So whatever is trendy makes the parent feel worthy and cool and all that. And what I've also noticed is a lot of those parents have issues themselves. So they don't invest time and effort into their kids. They invest money, they invest the latest Xbox or what have you. But they're so afraid of their children. They're so afraid. When my kid tried Fortnite, and he spent like 6 hours on Fortnite at some point, and it changed his brain chemistry. It's like Doritos for the mind. I just unplugged Fortnite. I unplugged everything, and a couple days later, he's back to normal. I've always had my kids in sports, kept them outside, kept an eye on their homework and all that and who their best friends were. And I will tell you, I had sleepovers every weekend. I made my house the place where all the kids came. And, sometimes I'd have 8 kids there. And most of the parents never called to check on their kids. I couldn't even imagine not doing so. So it's easy for outside influences, like Tickle was saying, influencers, to seep into their worlds and their brains, their minds, and sort of take over, because the parents aren't really, either they're doing too much for their children, or many times they're not doing enough, but at least their kid, you know, is saying they're trans, so that's cool. I mean, I long for the days when people used to brag about their children's achievements instead of their identities and their vaccines, their vaccine status. Okay, I'm out.
Jackie? Do we lose Jackie? I guess while Jackie's gone, Tinkle, did you want to say anything in response?
Thank you. I obviously I agree. We again, I refer to it as the Xbox generation, and I had younger stepchildren that came along before my now deceased husband and I ever got together. So that, and it was a competition. It was awful, and I was heavily involved in their lives. And they would come and live with us for 3 months at a time, and then 3 months with mom, and then 3 months with us. And we all would agree, yes, sports, everything, absolutely everything. And I was heavily involved. But unfortunately, that female thing comes along, and whatever I was doing, she was undoing, um, and didn't like the influence that I had of just being a normal kid, and if there is such a thing as normal kid anymore, but not sitting in front of a television, not sitting in front of a computer, not sitting in front of a tablet, not constantly isolating themselves. And this is therein again with the influences of social media, that it's rampant, and the kids are so lonely and so alone that they're only satiated now by how many followers they've got and how popular they are. And it's an absolute contest. And I've got a neighbour's young girl that we go swimming and we do all sorts of great things together. Her family are not in a position to be able to do some of the things that I'm able to do, and I'm very blessed that I'm allowed to do this with her. And she constantly asks me, "Oh, what is your Twitter name? I want to follow you," and I won't tell her. And how many followers do you have? And I won't tell her. Well, yeah, I want to get on Twitter, and I want to get a couple of 100,000. How do I do that? I won't tell her. This account is actually a sub account. My main account is completely off limits for when I'm speaking in spaces for a reason. And I've had that account since 2006. So I've seen a lot of changes on Twitter from when it first started back in March of 2006 to now. And I'm not just talking about the egregious behavior of deciding who's wrong and who's right, but just in general terms of the changes. And nowadays, I have cautioned myself with some of the followers on the Tickle account, which can get a little bit raunchy at times. How old are you? And I've had a couple of people actually say, "Oh, I'm 14, I'm 15." Like, nope, block. That's it. I won't be a part of that influential game that the kids want to play. And they know, majoritively they know that Twitter is the adult playground, more so than TikTok, more so than all of the other apps that they all use. And I asked her to show me her phone, and she had 7 different social media accounts. And it blew my mind because all I have is Twitter. And I don't have Instagram, don't have Facebook. And she had social media platforms I've never even heard of before. And I said, could you show me what's the average conversation? And some of the things that were on there, gosh, it was so difficult for me to see, because it's, again, it's not lazy parenting, but it's exactly what was just said a minute ago by Gigi. It's people that the parents want to trend, for God's sakes. So when the parents want to be, trending as trendy parents, then of course the kids are going to follow along with that edict. And it's very, very disturbing of the influences that we have, whether it's pedophiles now, and they have for several years now come into social media to groom children. That scares the heck out of me. And that's one of the reasons why if I get an idea that a new follower is on the young side, I can't demand to see their identification, but I do look at their on social media as best as I can to see, what it is they're into. So I don't encourage children to be following this account. But we do have groomers all over social media, and that is a massive problem. And we've seen this time and time again for many years now, with the NBC show where they would always catch a predator, all of that. And I'm not quite sure if would-be predators are actually encouraged by that behavior, and they see how easy it is to get away with it. And the majority of pedophilia doesn't really come from an attraction to children. It comes from a point of control, because they know they can control and manipulate a child so much easier than an adult female, or an adult male. And of course, we've seen this in the church. Unfortunately, it's prevalent everywhere. And I'm not sure if it was always there, and we just didn't have the social media to discuss it as much as we do, so therefore it appears as though we have more of it, or whether we just ignored it altogether in the past. And we see these big names being outed for what they've done, and it hits the headlines for a couple of days, and after 48 hours, the headline becomes a deadline. And it's just, when I don't mean deadline for time, I mean a dead headline, and it's gone. Headline, and it's gone. And there's not enough outrage, because it's become almost normalized for us to see these things every day and read about them, hear about them, see all about it, that it's like, oh, well, my kid's not going to do that. Well, how do you know? Are you actually actively involved in your kid, or are you just a show-off trophy parent? And I think, that's the nail on the head for me, is why aren't we, as the general population of adults, talking to our children more about these things, instead of just throwing them the latest, $1,500 phone or $2,000 iPad and throwing all these things at them? Why are we not throwing knowledge at them? Why are we not throwing good, solid parenting skills towards them? Why are we not, I'm not going to say protecting our children, but why aren't we investing more in children? In the sense of, where does this end, from the kid that wants the latest, trendiest game, to the kid that wants the latest trendy phone or shoes or basketball color or whatever the heck it happens to be? When did that switch from trying to appease children to trying to educate children? And I think that we've reached a level now where all the parents now I see are just appeasing children, because they've got their own agendas. And as Gigi said, I've got the biggest diamond, I've got the biggest house, I've got the best car, and my kid's going to have all of that too, instead of realizing where the parenting skills should be in cautioning our children, and of course including protection for our children too, but moreover as caution and education. And the conversations are uncomfortable, they're extremely uncomfortable, but they're necessary. And I can't influence children at this point. And one day perhaps I'll be blessed to be able to do that. My stepsons have turned into great people, and I'm very proud of them. But at the same time, I worry about, at their ages. Their father was quite a bit older than me, and at their ages now, in their early 20s, have they come through it? Did they get through it okay? Did they survive intact? Have they become, you know, productive people without being damaged? And I don't think parents realize how much damage they're doing by just constantly throwing pieces of gold, essentially, at their children, and not realizing the damage that's been done and being done on a constant level. And again, when I was little, 7 o'clock was my bedtime, and it didn't matter what television show was coming on. And if I was really, really good, and I tried really hard to be good, it was difficult being a redheaded little kid, but if I tried, really, really hard, and said, can I please watch this show? And occasionally I was allowed to stay up until 8 p.m. And now I see 2 and 3-year-olds are out at midnight with their parents. And I'm not criticizing that aspect, but gosh, if that's how little you care about your child now, what is going to happen in a few years' time when that kid is influenced to turn on you? And the kids are turning on their parents, left, right, and center. And that I see as part of the influence from the influencers, and they're not good influences.
Right. Gigi has to leave in a moment. Thank you, Gigi, for jumping on here and joining our conversation.
Thank you so much. I'm going to blame my family. I have to go make dinner for them.
That's a
It's
good
all good.
influence.
Damn it.
That's a very good influence. Well done. I gave you a follow. Thank you so much for sharing your insights.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tickle. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Adam, and all the listeners. So appreciate this.
I appreciate you.
Okay.
We'll talk later.
Take care.
Jackie, I tried to come to you before. You wanted to jump in real quick?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't have much to add to follow what Tickle and Gigi said. I mean, I don't have children, so it's very difficult for me to kind of respond to this, but it is something as a pornographer that I do think about when we create content. And it's one of the reasons why the studio that I work with now, Bellesa, we're kind of moving in a direction where we acknowledge and realize that a lot of children, unfortunately, their sex education comes from porn. And we want to depict something that's a little bit more realistic and consensual and enjoyable for women, because it seems like a lot of people are really getting their education from porn, which is sadly an entertainment. It's created for entertainment, not to educate. But I think at this point, just with the accessibility of pornography and everything in social media, we have to really consider what we're producing and how it affects those that are consuming.
Absolutely. So this is the portion where I'll go to the audience for people who want to speak. My only thing is, if you have something to say, try to be quick and concise to what you want to state, and then myself and everybody else on the panel can respond to it. So the first person is my new best friend, not new, I would say new friend. We're working our way to best friend, Isaiah Carter. Hold on one second. He's from Baltimore. What it do?
Hello, sir. How are you? Good evening to everybody here on the panel. And Adam, thank you very much for opening this space to me.
No problem.
Yeah. So I'll be the first person. Well, I'm just gonna come out and say it. I think there's something genuinely eroded in our culture right now. We are far more. We are too sexualized in our culture, and I've noticed this over the last several years. Now, I'm not a professional at all. I mean, I did journalism for a little bit, but I didn't make it. But I just watch things, right? I'm just a regular guy, and I watch this stuff, and I've noticed that within the last 5 years, there has seemed to be this effort to make sexual activity of any kind with anybody, or in some cases anything, freely available, destigmatized, and as USA Today attempted to do yesterday, attempt to normalize it, sanitize it, call it something that it isn't, right? Something, putting a new spin on it, a positive spin on it, as if we don't know what it is that we're looking at. And as someone who, if you want to put a political spin on it, as someone who has watched this stuff from a liberal position, I'm seeing this stuff. I'm seeing these things getting picked up and encouraged by people on our side, people on the left. It's like they're the ones who are leading the way, as it were, to this kind of to whatever the hell this is that we're seeing. And I think we're now at a crossroads where parents really need to pay attention to what is happening, what they're being taught in public schools or even private schools. We need to start paying attention. Well, I'm not a parent. I'm an uncle. I got 7 kids that I'm an uncle to, and this is a time now where everybody has to step up. This may or may not sound like something conspiratorial, but I believe that this is gonna sound crazy. I believe that this push to wrest control from parents, this push to wrest control from parents as far as what their children are being taught. I have a feeling that with, everybody says critical race theory, but I believe that critical race theory was just simply the Trojan horse for everything else. For the DEI industrial complex, for gender ideology. And now this, with the Trojan horses, you have the initial thing, the grand trophy that's placed in front of us, and then the rest of the soldiers hiding inside of the Trojan horse come out and take over the city. So I think that's kind of where we're at in our culture. I don't mean to sound crazy or anything like that, but I've just noticed this over the last several years, and like I said, I've been. It's time we really need to step up. We really need to step up and pay closer attention to what children are.
All right, thank you, Isaiah. Does anybody on the panel want to make a comment towards what he was saying?
Completely agree with him. There's nothing that I would disagree with in his comments at all. Thank you, Isaiah. This has been a gradual creep. This hasn't happened overnight. This is not something that just occurred in 2020 and 21 and now into 2022. This is not a gradual creep. This has been coming along for a very long time. And we have kind of shut the door on it a little bit in the sense of, well, it's not going to affect me. Well, it is affecting you. It's affecting all of us. Each and every one of us it's affecting. We have fewer and fewer people going to church. We have fewer and fewer people getting together with family dinners, even though Gigi's just going to go and cook. With less and less of that. It's almost as though children are in the way of adults with alternative lives. And no one wants to step back into the role of parenting on a full-time basis. And I don't mean that they have to ditch their job. I'm just talking about the responsibilities of full-time parenting. And everyone doesn't really understand the necessity of that. And I don't know where that got broken. I was born late to my parents, very late in their lives to my parents. And so I always had older grandparents, older parents, older aunts and uncles. Was the borderline the youngest in the family for quite some time. But maybe I was blessed because I had older grandparents that had been there, done that, seen it. The sex talk I got from my grandmother, my blessed Nana, was on your first date, don't shave above your knees. And now, of course, that's kind of funny, but she was right. Because then, of course, you're not tempted to do anything you shouldn't do. And those are the anecdotes that we don't have that anymore. We don't have connected generational families. And again, the lack of people with their spiritual aspects in their family is virtually gone now, because it's not trendy to go to church. It's not fashionable. It's not popular. It's quite the opposite. It's more popular to criticize churches and religions. However, those religions might not always agree with one another. It's become the opposite. So everyone attacks now. If you go to church, you're not the popular kid, and that those were the events that held the nucleus together. And now we don't have any of that, and it's absolutely tragic. And some would call me old-fashioned. Well, I'm still so young. I really don't care what anyone would like to call me on that level. But I just believe that we instead of trying to figure out how we can help pedophiles be better people, we need to figure out how to protect our children better from the influences of society saying it's okay, and society saying it's okay for you to decide at 5 years old what sex you want to be. And we need to better protect our children from those outside influences and become the positive influence.
I agree with you. We're going to go to the next person real quick. Venting to the Ether, which is an interesting name. Venting to the Ether, you can now vent to us. You can unmute yourself.
Well, I have a vent. I completely agree with what I believe Tickle said earlier. There's a huge difference between pedophiles and people who have impulses that they quote unquote can't control with children, and your basic predator who goes after people because they are easier to control. And I think conflating the two, it frustrates me. And it has been a slow creep, because I remember 30 years ago when I was growing up and the therapist told me, you're just don't dance at home, because it sexually turned on my stepfather at the time. So it was my fault. And the creep has gotten faster and faster and faster. And it's discouraging that we're putting all of this sexual responsibility on children way too young to handle it. And it's going to affect them for the rest of their lives. And not in a good way. This isn't empowering at all. And that's my vent.
I appreciate you sharing. Jacky, do you want to add to?
I 100% agree with what you're saying there. And I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I don't think that any child should have the pressure that they do today to sort of express and define anything about who they are. I mean, children should be enjoying their lives. They should be getting outside. They should be being creative. They should be focusing on things like that. Unfortunately, we do have too many parents. I mean, I live in Los Angeles that literally have accessory children, and they do use their children to be a platform to say, look how woke my kids are. Look how this, and that. What I will say, venting into the ether, is that some of the things that I am studying in school, which are addressing children that have been molested or have what is the right word here, have a parent or a step parent or a family member that is sexualizing them, is to never put any sort of blame on the child or to make any assumption that it is the child's responsibility to control the sexual desires of somebody else. So I will tell you that just in academia, which is terrifyingly very left is not preaching that, at least anymore. So at least the people that are going to school with me will not be graduating and telling a child to stop turning on another member of an adult, if you will.
Okay, we're going to go to the hard hat intellectual. You can unmute your mic, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. My phone was giving me a hard time. I kind of missed
No problem.
what you were saying. But yeah, I'll just be brief. The topic's very interesting. I love it. I think it's a very important topic. In regards to when I jumped in the room, excuse me, someone was speaking on pedophilia. And, it's been a heated, debated, subject on whether or not someone is born with that inclination or urgency or, that itch to be prone to have a sexual desire for children. And it's definitely something that needs to be examined. But even if that was examined, right, could you still rule out the fact that some people might not be born with that itch but still have it as well? And then how would we deal with that? And that's the problem, because even if it was born into people and they had that desire and that urge, what are we going to do about the people that it wasn't born into, and how would we even differentiate between the two? And that was something that I found very interesting. The last thing I'll talk about too was when someone in the room, I'm not sure who specifically said it, but they were talking about influencing, and that's 100% accurate. But then you have to ask yourself why. I mean, these influencers, these are private companies, these are entities, these are corporations. Someone controls them. They're smart people. They're not stupid. So why are they pushing these trends? Why are they pushing these certain ideas? There's a specific outcome. There's a goal. What is that? And I think that's something that people need to pay close attention to, because these people they're ideologues too. They have an ideology. They have a belief. They have a certain push of view on how they think the world should be, and they control a lot of these things. They're powerful people. What is their view? What is their goal? What will they do to achieve it? And that was just something else that I thought about when listening. But I'll keep it brief. It's definitely an interesting topic, though, for sure.
All right, thank you, man. Anybody want to respond or anything to say?
We have, in Houston recently, I received a postcard that told me that I had a sexual predator in the area, and showed a photo on this postcard. It had a picture of him, and it had his name and full address, including the apartment number. I was curious as to how far away this actually was. It turned out to be less than 3 miles away. And I made inquiries about this. Is this normal? Do we expect more of these postcards? Is this unusual? Is this a new program? What is this? And I found out that it was something that was set up in Houston several years ago. And it is quite unusual for this to be done. And Houston is the third largest city in the country. So keep that in mind. In the inner loop of Houston, we have over 3.5 to 4 million people. And then, of course, as you expand around the city, it gets to be massive numbers. And I was curious, was this just a one-off? And it turned out, no, it's quite common to get these postcards. So I was blessed that it was the first time I'd ever received one, or at least I felt blessed. And I actually carried it with me in my handbag while out grocery shopping, etc., in the neighborhood, just in case I saw this person. I had no idea what I thought I was going to say, but just so that I could, like, oh, okay, that's him. And he was on record of molesting several young girls under the age of 13. And I did a bit of research on him. I never did bump into him. And this postcard was about 3 years ago. And never have bumped into him. So I'm assuming he must have moved on, or he just didn't really associate much in the community. And when I asked my neighbors, they'd all received this postcard as well. And one of my neighbors that's been around for a lot longer than I have said that she'd had 1 or 2 of these postcards just about every year, always with the same address. So it appeared as though all of these pedophiles were living in this one apartment complex. So I looked into that, and that was exactly the case. Nearly everyone in there, male and female, were predators, all living together. And I've heard of there's a community, I believe, in Florida, where they're all ex-offenders. And they're monitored constantly and kept an eye on as to what they can do, where they can go. It's a gated community. It's run by a religious group, and they can monitor them to the nth degree. They have to be lights, basically, even though they have their own homes in this community, they have to have, by 10 p.m., they have to be back indoors and basically lights out. And there's patrols in the streets of this community to make sure that exactly is happening. They have group meetings where specialists come in to talk to them, the whole 9 yards. So we are doing something. The society is trying to do something. And there was actually a documentary about this group in Florida a couple of years ago, and the guy running it explains why he was doing it, and he said that he stepped up to do it because no one else was, and a couple of the offenders actually went on camera and said that they felt better protected from themselves in this strict community, and I found that fascinating. So things are being done. It's just not. It's not conducive to the mainstream media to popularize exactly what's happening and what's going on, because again, it's all about sensationalism, and our mainstream media now doesn't report the news; it creates the news, and this has been a slow slide into hell. And they don't want to report anything that's not sensationalist. And that's part and parcel of the problem. And even though most of our kids don't really pay attention to too much mainstream media, it's on in the background all the time. So there's the secondary, third, fourth level of influences there. And, again, children are sponges. They're going to pick up whatever their parents are doing, saying, thinking, acting. They're going to do exactly the same. And when the parents are not doing the correct job of making sure that their children have boundaries. We don't have boundaries with kids anymore at all. But when they don't do that, then somebody else will. And it makes them vulnerable. When they see mommy or daddy, constantly on social media and pumping out their own stories, and their own parents are trying to be popular, then the kid's going to do the same thing. And will strike out and do anything that will make it popular, because it's now being taught that that's the big thing to be. And again, I reversed myself to go back and say that we need more positive influences in children's lives. We don't have educational television shows anymore for kids. We just have cartoons where they're and Xbox games where they're ripping, killing, and shredding everyone. And I'm not saying that we need to stop all of that, but it needs to be tempered with influences of a more family style nature. And yeah, little young boys, are they still going to go and find old Playboys? Absolutely. They've always done it. When my grandmother passed away, the one that told me not to shave my legs above my knees, when we stripped out her place, we actually found 3 very, very old 1970s Playgirls, where it was naked men inside. And I was absolutely, I remember just collapsing in laughter. When I probably should have been appalled, but I wasn't. I just thought it was hysterical. But we're always going to have those things, but it's up to the parents and society to support parents in saying, let's temper everything. Let's make sure that that there's positive influences, not just outside, in negative influences.
Right. We're going to go to Talon. I think I said that right. You can unmute yourself. Talon. Talon True.
Oh, okay, there we go. Is that
There you go.
okay? Hey, all right. Now my worry here, and we have something that's in the States, and it's part of the Back Better Act, which is talking about Trojan horses. That's kind of what it feels like. It looks really, really good. And a section of, I think it's like a 5-section act, and it goes and it encompasses all through from 3 until into first 2 years of college, I think. But the main part that I'm worried about is the very, very, very youngest branch there, because they're looking at doing childcare, right, for 3 and 4-year-olds and making it more affordable for families. They're going to pump billions of dollars into this whole project. And in here, they are wanting to, number one, they're understaffed already as it is with everything going on, but they're wanting to open up more jobs to compensate for the children needing to be placed, and they're wanting to raise the wages. All this is good. And their educational aspect of it is, hey, well, a lot of kids don't have the opportunity to be around. I don't know if you've had 3 and 4-year-olds. I'm assuming this chat has had them. They don't need very much, to be socialized and for education. It's playing at that age, and it's talking and it's reading and having them see your faces. So with everything that's happened, are these children are going to be going, and then are they going to need to be masked as well? And they're going to be looking at masked adults, and not be able to get, because I used to be a teacher. One of the classes you take is early childhood development. These kids, that's how they learn. They have to look at your mouth when you are talking and enunciating things. They have social, emotional wellness and growth that they need to go through by looking at the expressions on your face for when they throw paint on the wall. They're going to look at your face and see if you're angry or if you're happy or thought that was funny. But when you're talking about 3 and 4-year-olds, because I keep going back to the age, it's like they don't know body parts. A lot of them can barely talk. You can't really understand them. Who are these people that they're wanting to mass hire? You should be vetting them, most definitely. We've all read the horror story daycare news stories, and that's just at a regular old time throughout the many years. Ever since I was a child, it would pop up, Now you're going to be making it more of an influx, right, into that profession. Does this involve cameras? Are parents able? Does some of this funding involve cameras? Can parents log in and look at the cameras and randomly pop in and have a recording of their kid and make sure that they're safe? Everything like that. And so it's good for working families who need to work. But then it made me pause. It's like, well, why do they need to do that? We're just raising everything up. We have 2 work mules that are capable of working. And could they make the sacrifice? Could the parents make that sacrifice? This thing says that families, they don't have to spend the 7% of their income now towards it. I'm like, 7%. Okay, I had my first daughter and I was in California, and I looked at childcare thinking about going back to work. That would have absorbed a whole paycheck. Plus gas, plus everything else. I would have actually owed money towards my car, gas tank, getting there and back. So I'm like, this is just cheaper just not to do it. That was one kid. And that was me making $13.50 in California, My husband would have to pay me so I could go work and get out of the house and dump my kid off at a facility. Why? It's area dependent. But we are giving our children the most valuable years that they have for bonding. They are building memories at that age. A lot of first time memories are when they are like, 3, 4, 5. We're putting them in there. Again, it's good if you have to. Single parents, they have no other option. They kind of need this option, but what is that going to do in the long run? Well, we gave you free childcare, so now the cost of living is going to go up. There's no justification for it. Go ahead and be our work mules. Give me your children. Where there's no, that those hours are lost. Those years are lost, and they don't have the language to be able to tell you about their day. So who are these people? Are there cameras? What exactly is a thing? You can't really trust them to say, hey, X is going to happen for sure, 100%. No, anybody that's lived for the past 2 years and paid attention knows that X does not happen 100%, barely happens 1%. Okay, so that is one of my fears. They're taking more of a parental role in those early developmental years and disguising it as a really good, awesome sounding thing, but that lollipop they're giving you is a ghost pepper lollipop that's going to burn your throat.
Okay.
Hey, I'm so sorry, guys. I actually have to log off. I just didn't want to interrupt, but thank you, Adam, so much for having me. It was wonderful to be on this call.
No problem. And thank you. I appreciate you staying on as long as you could.
Absolutely. Have a wonderful night.
You as well.
Good night, Jackie. Thank you.
And Talon, thank you for adding to the conversation. We're going to go to Rod Jackson. Hold on one second. All right, Rod, you can unmute yourself.
Hey everybody, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, going to the subject of sexualization in media. I've been a porn actor, now I'm an actor, a mainstream actor, and the thing that I thought about it is I found that it actually is somewhat helpful, to an extent, to have just representation of different kinds of people. You know what I mean? But the thing that I loved about it in acting is that the only thing that mattered was your talent level. You know what I mean? It wasn't about what you did when you left here. It wasn't about, and I like that aspect of it. And as a performer, I'm aware of the inadvertent role that I play. You know what I mean? Like I'm aware of the role that I play and how individuals learn about sex and things of that sort. And like I can't remember who said it, but we do need positive influences. And I can resonate with that. There's companies like Balesa. I've got the chance to work with them. Jack had to get off, but I love that what they do because they want to have a good representation. It's the same way that I want my content to be. I want it to reflect beautiful, consensual sex that focuses on mutual pleasure, like what it's supposed to be. And I don't know, this has just been a cool conversation to listen to all around. I don't want to take up too much time, but I just want to say I appreciate you guys for hosting this space. This has been cool to actually listen to.
Thank you. And I appreciate you jumping on. Um, Hopefully you follow me. I'll follow you actually, because I think it's interesting. I'm always interested in people in different fields. I never really get to talk to anybody from the adult field. So I might reach out to you and just ask you questions if you don't mind that.
For sure, man.
All right. Um, we'll go to Scapegoat, who ironically has a snake as avatar. All right, you can unmute yourself.
Oh, hi.
How you doing?
I am good. I was not expecting to be able to come on here. I I kind of wanted to pop on because I joined actually when you guys were on the very different topic actually. I really loved what Rod had to say. I hate to turn it to something that's a bit darker because he really made the vibe in the room really good, and I hate to say I'm gonna kind of darken it, but I feel like it's something that a lot of people need to hear. So
It's okay.
I am actually a coroner. So um for anyone who doesn't know what a coroner is, I take care of autopsies of people who basically anybody who would come into a police station for a death that is suspicious or unnatural. Um, so murders, suicides, ODs, car crashes, etc. And something I've noticed, I have had so many cases of people who have come in who basically self-mutilated because of the fact that they genuinely hated themselves for the fantasies that they had, for the things that they wanted and knew were wrong. And like hearing the whole conversation was, it was nice to hear people talking about, you know, acknowledging the fact that a lot of people who are pedophiles and are in that situation genuinely, they cannot control how they feel. And I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that that means that it's okay. Obviously not. But what I'm trying to say is it is a mental illness fully. And again, with what Rod was saying, there's so many outlets that kind of push that forward. There was one specific case that came in, and it was, I'm just gonna say it blatantly, it was a self-castration gone wrong. And this was a person who was aggressively addicted to pornography, but specifically was not watching pornography that was anywhere near healthy. I am I'm healthy porn positive. I'm super sex positive. I think that there needs to be really positive education that actually shows what sex is supposed to be. And this was not that. It was violent schoolgirl type media. And his entire family knew. Every single one of them knew what was going on, and no one helped him. So he started to realize that he was having attraction to children, and he proceeded to commit harm on himself because of that. So I feel like there needs to be more conversations about what is genuinely healthy to be consuming when it comes to media. Because there are well-known porn categories that I would argue are borderline illegal at worst, morally questionable at best. But then there's also porn, which, outing myself here, I absolutely love. I don't know how to pronounce it properly. I'm probably going to screw it up, but Bellesa does absolutely amazing stuff. And they actually show people in environments that are realistic and healthy and consensual, and they treat everybody so well. And I think being open about websites like that would help so many people to not get into porn that is unhealthy. I mean, it's a little concerning to me how much stuff is out there that's literally pseudo incest. I mean, the amount of it's glorified, and so is cheating porn, revenge porn, all of this stuff. And as somebody who sees these people come in at like the very last section of this addiction, I have a lot of feelings about how poorly it can affect a person's mindset. And people who are addicted to that sort of media, many of them have this deep understanding of what they're watching is wrong. There was the same situation with somebody who became addicted to bestiality porn. I have seen more people commit harm because of addictions to things that they got into, most of which far too young. And I think one of the main ways to prevent that actually would be having more in-depth conversations with people when they are, old enough to understand it. I mean, shit, having college classes that would be more, I guess, geared towards people of that age group and being like, hey, just giving the information in a way that's actually comprehensive and not just brushing everything under the rug. Because a lot of them, I have seen a disturbing amount of college-age people who have passed away due to self-mutilation because of the things that they've become addicted to. And no one ever talks about it. So I kind of wanted to give that point of view because genuinely, no one ever talks about how many people genuinely harm themselves, not just mentally, because of the things that they've seen at either far too young or the things that they've seen because they've gone down this rabbit hole and started with content that was more than just unsafe for the brain. I guess is the nicest way to say that. But I just wish that more people would understand as well that people who are interested in children in any way, the vast majority of them, they need help. And I don't mean that in like they need help, we need to lock them up sort of way. I mean, they need help and genuine help. Because the things that some of them did to themselves, it was like they were trying to claw their way out of their own body. So, again, I'm sorry for making everything quite depressing. But I kind of wanted to bring that perspective because, like I said, it's not talked about at all, actually. So I did not know about it until I got my first job as a coroner. But yeah, so that's kind of my whole perspective from my life experiences.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. Chico, do you have anything to say in regards to what she said?
I found that a fascinating, I guess you could call it eulogy to the communities that we're aware of that want to molest children. And again, I'm still going to say that genetically this has not been proven to be something that they were born with. And again, I'll repeat in case you weren't here, that the majority of children that have been molested become child molesters themselves, which therefore in and of itself proves that it is not a biology concern, it's a behavioral concern. And I think there's, for the people that are involved in this that claim they can't control themselves, it's up to them to get the help they need. It's up to them to speak up and speak out and find therapy, find resources to assist them with. Your story sounds extremely tragic. People trying to claw their way out of their bodies. That's a heck of a statement. But at the same time, it is, if they're able to recognize that within themselves, then the ability to recognize that they need help should also be there. One doesn't correlate to the other. And the basic correlation of realizing that you have a problem, individual problem, is to go and get help. And we live in the United States, and just about everyone's got a therapist for something, one way or another, or been through therapy for some way, one or the other. And it's the self-realization that's the problem here. And they don't. And they just go into a life of deceit and deception and lies and manipulations. And again, we're grouping pedophiles into one lump when they're not, because a lot of molesters are just in it for the power trip because they can manipulate a child where they're not able to manipulate an adult because of their own insufficient lives and their own insufficient communication with adults. And so they choose children and groom them. We're not talking about the behavioral side of pedophilia, but moreover the addiction to the power. And they I don't know, 50, 60-year-old men that have never had a successful relationship, and so they realize through other means of influence that this could be an option for them. And this is what we talked about earlier on about influencing, and that's where we have to be very careful. And I've got a friend here right now who would love to talk and explain about their job, and several times a week investigating and arresting pedophiles. And it's out there, it's happening. We just don't hear about it. So it doesn't mean to say it's not happening. We just don't hear about it because it's not a popular opinion that these people are bad. We're now seeing USA Today Life, and of course they quickly deleted it, but several of us managed to catch it before they did, and the internet is forever. And trying to explain that not every pedophile is going to molest a child. Then how do they know they're a pedophile? And that was their explanation for that. And I actually put it up in the top in the nest. You can click above you if you scroll up, and you'll see where there's a post with a copy of everything that USA Today Life posted. And their explanation is outrageous. And trying to normalize this behavior is unacceptable because it's nothing normal about it. Whether it claims to have been a genetic birth defect or otherwise, there's nothing normal about this behavior. There are no excuses for this behavior. As an adult, do whatever you find is appropriate for you. Absolutely. Not children. Never children. Never, ever children. There is no excusable reasons to do that. None. I don't care what the urges are. You can stop your urges. When people give up cigarettes, they are urged to keep smoking, but eventually they get there, usually through some help. And yeah, it's the same kind of thing. And the urge to do bad is not an inherent, innate quality in anyone, except if you're Charles Manson, of course. And that was his claim, that he was insane because he was born that way. Well, pedophilia is not listed as an insanity in the DSM. It's a behavioral disorder, and it can be fixed. But it can only be fixed when they step up and say that they need the help. And that's the first big step towards rescuing society from these potential animals.
All right. We're going to go to Koopa Loop. Oh, Coop.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is my first time speaking in one of these spaces.
No, it's okay.
I'm glad you didn't put me on under Rod Jackson. That'd be a hard guy to follow. It'd be like Jerry Lee Lewis. Goodness gracious, great balls of fire. But I've been in law enforcement for 20 plus years, so I have a very different take on. Well, actually, I probably have the same take as you on the sympathetic attitude towards pedophiles. And I can say from a law enforcement standard, the recidivism rate is like 99.99%. And as far as a lot of people's attitudes to be sympathetic towards them, they can't control their thoughts, right? They can't control themselves. Well, they can't control their thoughts. Just like most of the women in this room, they see Brad Pitt, they want to tackle him and act out fantasies on him, but they don't tackle Brad Pitt and act out fantasies on him. Most of the guys in this room, they see a lot of girls, they want to motorboat, but we just don't do that because it's wrong. you're victimizing someone, and we have self-control. Everyone has self-control. Everyone has the ability to make choices. Now, if the argument is they can't control themselves, well, then I just take that back to the movie Old Yeller. I mean, Old Yeller was a great dog, right? He gets rabies. Now you can't allow the dog around the kids. So you have to put the dog down. And I know that sounds super harsh, but when you look at the recidivism rate, if that's your argument, that's an invalid argument. You gotta have to use the Old Yeller standard. Now, I dated a girl that her brother was at the Adler Psychology School of Medicine. They have a Chicago and a Toronto location. And he's telling me what I heard tonight, that, well, it's actually perfectly normal to have sexual thoughts towards children. Most people do. You're only a pedophile if you act on them. And I said, no, whoa, hold the fuck up. I've been the police for 25 years in a major city. Most people do not have thoughts about children. Most people are disgusted by them. The fact that they're trying to normalize that means you should ask for your tuition back and go to a different school, because they're grooming you. But you don't realize they're grooming you, and you're going to be the next 2 generations removed. You're going to be the next professors they're grooming you to normalize pedophilia. And what the hell are you going to say? What are you going to be teaching 20 years from now? I think a lot of people misinterpret the Bible when they say we're all created equal. They think of that in terms of intellectual or physical attributes. No. What the Bible is telling you, and I'm not a very biblical person, but what they're telling you is that all our souls have equal value when we enter into this world. But we appreciate or depreciate that value on how we treat other people. When we victimize another person, the value of our soul is depreciated. We should not be treated as if we have the same value as someone who hasn't victimized another person. Now, relative to what Tickle was saying, once a year in law enforcement, you have to go around and verify sex offenders registry, their addresses. There is some weird shit going on with a lot of the phony religious institutions, where there's like 60 people living under one roof that's supposed to be a church. And you go in there, you like get 60 sex offender registries that you have to verify that they're living there. Obviously, the church is somehow financially benefiting, and it's not like a real church. But I also equate here. Think about the fact that you're saying they can't help themselves. So they can't look at it from someone who's a kleptomania, right? Kleptomania is, and this is going back to the people who are saying, well, porn helps them. So a kleptomaniac, you think, well, they just need money. If they get money, they'll stop stealing. Well, a lot of kleptomaniacs are millionaires, and they can't stop stealing because you think that the product is what they're pursuing. It's the process. So the same thing with pedophiles. You're thinking, well, if you just give them child porn, they'll stop raping children. And in a sense, they're kleptomaniacs themselves because they're stealing the innocence of children. So you can give them all the porn in the world. It's the process that means something to them. That's what they're excited by. And I arrest probably 3 a week. And what would blow you guys' minds is you're thinking children, they're just molesting children. 3 times a week in every major city, an infant is raped. Blew my fucking mind when I started working with the Special Victims Unit. Just blew my mind. You don't even think that's possible. It's kind of like when you hear about someone fucking a chicken. You're like, how is that even possible? It happens. And these people, you can't fix them. So it goes back to Old Yeller and how we start life as, the values, like we at an equal value, and then what we do beyond that depreciates or appreciates the value of our soul. If I had inclinations toward that, I would kill myself. I'd commit suicide. So I don't think it's enough that people are like self-mutilating. If that's what you're doing, no, that's not even enough. Like, you should remove yourself from society. I know that sounds harsh, but if you have a good moral compass, that's what any of us probably in this room would do. Again, I'm not used to organize my thoughts on these things with you guys, so I'm just gonna let it go at that.
I appreciate it. I may actually reach out to you because from your experience and everything that you're saying is very interesting to me. So I might send you a DM if that's all right with you.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I pretty much agree with everything you had to say tonight. And it's not our children don't have a responsibility to protect their own innocence. It's our responsibility to protect their innocence.
I'm glad you two
Absolutely.
have Adam and I have been connected for a while, and Coop and I have been connected for a while. So I'm really glad that you two are getting good.
And I'm not a dumb cop. I was accepted to medical school. I got a microbiology degree. So relative to what Adam was saying earlier, it's disgusting to me to see parents say, "Oh, I'm protecting our grandparents from our grandparents." But at least the grandparents I had, they give their life for their grandchildren, not the other way around. That's not how the world's supposed to work.
Right. Exactly. Coop, thank you again. I really appreciate it. We're running. I don't want this to go too late, so we actually have one last person that we're going to go to. Tabs Revelations. Tabs, you there?
Taps, press your mic button, bottom left.
Oh, sorry. I was so sorry. Anyway, I just wanted to bring a point of view. I'm actually African, but I'm now in Europe. But so I kind of come from afar so that my opinions can be understood. But here it is. I was once told a story of a man was a preacher and was in a church, and he wanted to move the keyboard or the piano. So he took his time because if he was ever going to move that piano, the elders would be like, "No, we've had this piano in this place for such and such a time. It's been a long time, and you can't come and change things. That's impossible." So he decided to move it inch by inch every Sunday until he moved it to wherever he wanted it to be, and nobody complained. So it's a very clear analogy. You understand that things move in a very slow pace until they're in a place that you didn't want them to be without you really noticing it. And I'll give another example. There's also a story in the Word of God. There's a man, there was an older prophet who was approached by a young prophet who was sent by God, and he badly influenced that young prophet. And the young prophet was killed by God for listening to what the older prophet did, and yet he was following a man of God. So I would think that this young man is innocent, but he has done still something that is wrong because he didn't obey the word of God that he was given of God. So then, to then apply these things to the current topic is this. We see that the world slowly moves into a level of tolerance where our conscience really has to be silenced when we want to reason out with people of the world, and things are moving in a direction where 20, 50 years ago, we didn't think we'd be in this state. It would be shocking for a man who lived 50 years ago, or let's say 100 years ago, to be in this society and see things how they are now. So my message is this. I think the United States has so much influence on everybody else, even the Africans where I'm coming from, and Europe where I am, to say, if you allow things to move towards the left so much, even gradually, just so that you don't get this backlash, and you allow things to just continue to be immoral, all that you allow, it affects the rest of the world. Our kids, me, myself, having exposure to the internet and how it might have affected me, I think it has, if one understands that the actions that we do have a ripple effect on a lot of people in the world, you will be more bold in standing up for the truth and what you believe in. So basically, I think the same way homosexuality and all these other things which I don't agree with have been accepted, is the same way pedophilia is going to be accepted in the near future. I wouldn't want to go further. But anyway, those are my views, and I hope I didn't offend anybody. Yeah.
Oh, that's absolutely beautiful. I love the piano story. You're from Zimbabwe?
Oh, you know what? I just removed them as speakers.
It's fine. It's fine. I recognise his accent. If you're still listening, I'm from Durban, and I could recognise your twang straight away. But beautifully said. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're gonna come to the end here, and Tickle, I appreciate you. I know Gigi and Jackie had to jump off, but I appreciate you being on here, especially last minute. I reached out to you. Do you have any last words before we end?
I appreciate the invitation, last minute or not. That's perfectly fine. I don't have a problem with that. I have no ego that can be damaged. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for inviting me to be on the panel with you. I'm very honoured with that. I I have strong opinions on this, but as with all, I don't prefer to force them on others. I just prefer to explain them and encourage others to do a little bit of thinking based on what I've said, what others have said. I don't believe anyone here ultimately is forcing opinions. We're sharing thoughts. We're sharing perhaps some solutions, and it's important to understand that we have a voice, and we need to use it. And one thing I've always said in my own spaces for nearly a year now is that one voice multiplied by another, multiplied by many, becomes a very loud noise. And we need to make noise. We need to be louder than the noise that's being presented to us. And that's where we that moment of, it's not a kumbaya thing, but it is a come together thing. And if we don't like what is being presented to us, it is entirely up to us to come together one voice by one voice until it becomes a very, very loud noise, to shout back and to be louder than what's been shouted at us. And I hope that point has been made this evening, and you've done a fantastic job, Adam. I'm very grateful to you. If you don't know DB Fugate, he's very close, and he's running for Congress in the state of Florida. And I think you two might have quite a few things in common.
Yep, I saw him here and I just added him or followed him. So my final words are basically I think that the most important thing in our society and in pretty much any society is family. It's why I talk so much about family, why I talk about my family situation. And I think the root of most of the issues that we complain about, that we see happening, whether it be crime, poverty, things of that nature, there are all types of factors as to why certain situations happen. But in so many ways, family is like the very root of it. And when it comes to protecting our children from negative things in the media, from overt sexual content online, things of that nature, it takes a strong sense of family and a sense of protecting our children from things that they're ill-equipped to handle at a particular moment. Excuse me. Um, which is why I'm always deeply disturbed when I see uh, people of a very, let's say, political persuasion or agenda or something of that nature, where they are uh, grooming their own children to say certain things that a child at a particular age would not repeat. They would not, I'm sorry, would not come up by their own. They're just repeating what's been told to them. Uh, I have a general issue with involving children in politics, right? And that's because they're being told what to say and not allowed to think about what they actually feel, you know, and let them develop into their own political ideology when they get older, right? And there's a constant forcing of children identifying as something. And in many cases, it's identifying in some particular sexual nature. Um, and this constant push and the failures of parents to give in to particular ideologies, to give in to their own children who are coming with this information from elsewhere, right? They're not challenging their own children. They're not saying that's nonsense. They're not pushing back on anything on the children. They're treating the children. I think someone said it before, like mini adults. And I don't care how well a child speaks, how grown up you think they are, and how genius you think your child is, right? They're not prepared for it, right? Their brain is not developed, right? And we've put a marker as age of 18 to treat someone like an adult. And even at the age of 18, their brain is still not developed. So we're giving all types of weapons and all types of information, and we're expecting children to decipher it, right? Which is why I think giving children, hormone blockers is child abuse. You know, if they want to do something to themselves, do it when they're later in life, because they're still developing. Their brains are still processing information. They're still trying to figure themselves out. The body's changing, hormones, the brain, all these different things. And it's the failures of families that are allowing these things to happen. And in many cases, their parents are pushing it, right? So, I remember seeing this one program where they had two children who were going through the same process. That is not by accident, right? That is not it's absolutely abnormal, right? And this is the failure of parents who are using the children as props, right? So we either have parents who are using the children as props, we have parents who don't care enough, we have parents who are too busy, right? And we need more parents who are just somewhat involved in their child's life, right? We need parents to step up and say, we don't like what's happening within our schools who are pushing hypersexuality and gender ideology and all these different things who are ill-equipped to handle this information right now, right? If they want to be whatever they want to be, let them figure that out on their own. But I, as their parent, decide what they get to learn and push back on information and protect my child from outside influences who are using my child to groom into being some sort of ideologue, right? We need parents to step up. And I think what I'm actually really proud of is parents are starting to step up. More and more parents are stepping up and saying, I do not want this to happen for my child. They're complaining more, and that's a good thing. They're saying this is not normal. This is not acceptable. And I will not have my child around it. There's more and more parents who are homeschooling because of stuff like this. And we need to continue that trend. We need to continue that trend moving forward. And ultimately, what I'm stating is the family unit is the most important unit. Despite what happens around you, despite what's happening in the world, there could be pornography all over the place and sexuality everywhere. It is up to the parents to protect their children. And it's something that we can do. So that's my final words. I've been trying not to cough this entire time, and it's been remarkable. Once again, thank you, Tickle, for staying on as long as you did. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate everybody joining in on this conversation. I believe we have a show next week, Wednesday, 7:30 as well. Different topic, different people. So please stay tuned. Follow me for more information. Tickle, thank you again.
It's truly been my pleasure, and thank you. I hope you'll extend an invitation to me in the near future. Thank you so much. You've done a great job.
Absolutely.
This could have
Absolutely.
got out of control very quickly, and you've mastered how to do this, and I congratulate you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So to everybody, thank you. Have a wonderful night. We'll be posting this up in the near future. If you go to agoodfaithspace.com, you can see some older shows that we did at different topics. So stay tuned. If you have any questions, feel free to DM me. Everybody have a wonderful night. Stay safe, stay healthy. Don't get the coof like I did, and be well. I'll talk to you later.